Today I have Dr. Thomas Seyfried.
Yes.
He is a leading researcher and professor in the field of cancer biology and metabolism, and he is best known for his pioneering work that I have taken the time to read his book, which I think is fascinating, and which challenges conventional genetic-based model of cancer development. I think Dr. Seyfried is actually quite a marvel to see, and focuses on the idea that cancer is primarily a metabolic disease rather than just purely genetic one. And everything related to mitochondrial dysfunction makes a whole lot of sense when you start putting the pieces together. Dr. Seyfried is also a professor at the Boston College, and that's where he does all of his research. And he's dedicated, I think, all of his life to trying to find an answer and solutions to be able to treat patients who have cancer. It's something that I admire very much. And thanks to your book, Dr. Seyfried, I've been able to help my patients, my cancer patients, and improve their outcomes, and even some of them even reaching remission, which is something that I never thought I would be doing one day. So I have a great respect for your work, Dr. Seyfried, and I think that many people need to hear what you are doing. Your contribution is a great one for humanity, I think, and I hope one day you receive like a Nobel Prize for what you're doing here,
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Eduardo. It's nice to be here and have the opportunity to address your questions. It's not, I didn't plan my life to be here to do this. This is a very interesting, no one can plan years in advance of what they do. When you're trained in foundational principles of biology and genetics, like I was at Illinois State University with Herman Brockman, and at the University of Illinois with Bill Daniel and Evelyn Weber, and then at Yale University in the epilepsy field, and then here, it converges at some point where you begin to connect the dots from a lot of diverse fields. And I was always doing research, not always, but we had a lot of tumors and epilepsy and all these things. And eventually you get crossed wires, and all of a sudden you make observations that are foundationally solid scientifically, but not recognized or appreciated by the entire cancer field. And then you find yourself, you think you're crazy because you see something so clear, and everybody else is still beating the bush looking for gene mutations,
exactly,
which are largely irrelevant to the nature of the disease.
Oh,
it's unbelievable. So
yes. Well, the way how things are taught in medical school for medical doctors and residents, we have no idea. I mean, we just basically follow, protocols. This drug for this type of cancer, this drug for this other type of disease, and literally they don't teach us the foundations, how cancer actually really plays out, right? And this is something that should be incorporated into medical schools. It should be taught. We should be receiving this type of education, I think. And there's a shift that needs to take place, in medical education.
Yeah, well, but they are getting that. They're getting the education. When all my students go to medical school, their first year in the biochemistry and principles, they say cancer is a genetic disease. And they tell you about all these wonderful mutations that are causing dysregulated cell growth, and you got to target this and target that.
Yeah.
And they never said, they either don't know or don't understand that it's not a genetic disease. Yeah. And we have clearly shown that these mutations are downstream epiphenomena of damage to the oxidative phosphorylation. And they don't say that in the medical schools. And if they do, they get their hands slapped, or they're told don't say that. It's like,
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, and the idea. I mean, I've had a couple of encounters with some oncologists, and when we start talking about metabolic therapy, all of a sudden their eyes start to roll back. But I understand where they're coming from and the way how they been doctrinized, I guess you could say, to thinking in such a way. But you need to have people that actually go out there and try to start changing the there has to be a shift, in the way of we think and do things, And one of the best ways to do that is by bringing information to all the public, even doctors, because I've seen a lot of your videos and many of the interviews that you give with a lot of people, and I every time I see one of your videos, I learn something new. But I think it's always important to also bring this information to South America. I mean, people down over there, they need to be able to know what's actually going on, in other parts of the world, right?
Yeah,
And this interview obviously is going to be translated to Portuguese and also to Spanish. So people over there in South America will be able to see, what you have to say. And so my question is, Dr. Seyfried, so what got you into metabolic therapy to begin with? How did that all begin?
Well, as I said, we were doing work on epilepsy at Yale University, and I had developed a lot of models for epilepsy, and we were mapping genes. We were I'm a geneticist, mammalian geneticist, biochemist by trade, and the hot thing was map genes, find the genes that are causing the epileptic seizures, and we were doing that, and we were looking at very polygenic traits and multifactorial traits, and it was always a gene-environmental interaction of some sort. We looked back at Gower's dictum, all the foundational principles of the field of epilepsy, and we had models that mimicked all this kind of stuff. Then one of my students said, "Oh, there's a big meeting in Seattle, Washington, on ketogenic diets for epilepsy."
If you want to learn how to implement the ketogenic diet and the Press Pulse protocol into your cancer management, just visit school.com/keto for cancer, the new community by our research analyst Johnny Rockermeyer. Within this new community platform, you can connect with other patients and learn from their experiences. You can also just search through the posts other members have already made. You will have access to our classroom section as well, which provides practical advice and tools for the best results. These sections cover all parts of the Press Pulse protocol that you should implement. Starting with the general scientific concepts by Dr. Thomas Seyfried, we will show you how to start the ketogenic diet, including which foods to choose and which to avoid. Additionally, we prepared a list of doctors specialized in metabolic therapy, as well as details about glutamine inhibition and hyperbaric oxygen protocols. So, take a look around at school.com/keto for cancer.
And when I was at Yale, I thought maybe I could write an internal grant for ketogenic diet to study my epilepsy model. Nobody is interested. They said, "Well, don't waste your time. Ketogenic diet for epilepsy is passé. The big thing is molecular targeting. Same thing. Molecular targeting of genes that disrupt electrical excitability in the brain. So find those genes," they were telling me. "Okay, I'll publish papers mapping genes." And I did all this stuff. And then when my student came back, she was so excited about Jim Abrams and the Charlie Foundation and all this about ketogenic diet stopping all kinds of epilepsy. So I put it on the mice, calorie restricted ketogenic. Oh my God, all these mice stopped seizing. And it didn't make any damn difference what the gene was. It affected the whole physiology of the mouse. He stopped seizing. And then we realized that it was mostly calorie restriction, and we linked it to low glucose and elevated ketones. And it was really the glucose shifting that was stopping the seizures. The ketones were elevated as a compensatory signal. But we were doing biochemistry of brain tumors in the lab at the same time, looking at glycosphingolipid metabolism. I was a big shot in this whole area, glycosphingolipids,
Wow.
characterizing all these things. Oh yeah, we were foundational, hardcore brute force biochemists and geneticists. So I clearly had the background and the know-how about everything, all this kind of stuff. And then we said, "Oh, let's throw some ketogenic diet at these mice, restricted calorie restriction." Oh my God, it was more powerful to reduce tumors than it was in the epilepsy thing.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I had no clue. And then Linda Nebling at Case Western Reserve University gave two little hopeless kids, high-grade glioma kids, a ketogenic diet, and they both responded remarkably well. And I said, "Wow, look at that." And I said, "Well, what's going on with this?" And she said it might have something to do with the work of Otto Warburg. So
Yes.
I always heard of, and most of us in field of biochemistry have heard of Otto Warburg. The
Yeah.
problem is I didn't know what he really did. And then I started looking at his papers and reading them over and over. I read some of Warburg's papers more than 50 times.
Wow.
And each time I read it, I find another kernel of new information that I didn't know or didn't appreciate. And then I said, wow, Warburg said that all cancer results from a defect in oxidative phosphorylation coupled to a compensatory fermentation. And which means that the fermentation driven by glucose. And we started looking at mitochondria in mouse brain tumors and found they all their mitochondria were defective in one way or the other.
Yes.
And they were all dependent on glucose. I said, my God, this guy Warburg must have had it right. and then I said, why? And then you look in, and everybody said Warburg was wrong. I said, what? Oh my God. Okay, Warburg is wrong. Should I waste my time? and then I found out they said he was wrong because tumor cells take in as much oxygen as normal cells, and therefore oxidative phosphorylation can't be the cause of cancer, like Warburg said in his hypothesis.
Right.
So, and that changed the whole field. The field ran off chasing genes like lemmings over the cliff. That mindless mass migration of top scientists running after genes, leaving the metabolism field to rest in peace. Pretty much. Forget about Warburg. Forget about all this stuff. Let's go chase genes. Just like the epilepsy field, right? Running off, everybody's chasing gene. Anything, man. You find anything wrong with you, found some gene mutation, like it's right at the, So, but any event, so everybody was chasing genes. And I'm sitting there saying, wait a minute now, this guy Warburg may not have been wrong. I did research in my lab that seems to support what this guy is saying.
Yeah.
So I said, what the hell? So then we did a deep dive on the structure of mitochondria. And man, they're broken up. They're not efficient. They're not functional. Yeah. And then he said, oh, then they have to start fermenting glucose. So the field, those guys that are chasing genes, but also doing metabolism, said, well, Warburg's wrong because the tumor cells are taking in oxygen. So what I have done since then is we have now found that tumor cells do indeed take in oxygen like normal cells, but they're not using it for oxidative phosphorylation.
Exactly. Yeah, it's
using it to make reactive oxygen species, which is causing the mutations in the nucleus.
That's right.
So I said, oh my God, this whole cancer field is
off
on the wrong path. They're off on the wrong path. They're chasing tails. They're chasing effects, not causes.
That's just mind blowing.
Yeah. So when you do all that, and then our big discovery. Now we validated what Warburg did, but we found something that he never knew about, and that was the fermentation of the amino acid glutamine. And the field, all the field talks about is glycolysis and oxphos, glycolysis and oxphos. Yeah. We have now found in the mitochondria itself, the broken mitochondria can get energy from fermenting the amino acid glutamine. Oh my God, this is unbelievable. now we can fix up so much of the confusion and bring the field back on track. Exactly. These damn cancer cells need to ferment. It's a necessity. It's a requirement. They can't live without the ferment. Why? Because their oxphos is insufficient. It's not that complicated. But yet, when you look at the NCI, National Cancer Institute, says, oh, there's 100 different diseases, all very complicated. Everybody's complicated. Yeah, because you're looking at the wrong. You're working under the wrong theory. So you bring it back on track, and cancer can be managed very, very effectively, non-toxically, if you simultaneously target the fuels that are driving the dysregulated growth.
Exactly. I can be testament to that because I've seen my patients improve. I've seen patients who have colon cancer. I've seen patients who have breast cancer, melanoma. I mean, I'm an internist and a dermatologist, and I treat my patients with using your metabolic therapy. And I do, hyperbaric medicine as well, and vitamin C. And we also use some repurposed medications like you also propose as well, like mebendazole and we do see the results. I mean, it's outstanding, and I personally, at first, I must be honest with you, Dr. Seyfried, I was a little bit skeptical, And I felt, well, I don't know, maybe. I had a lot of doubts, like any doctor would, And I think that's a normal response from any practical physician. But then you start I started reading your book, and then I said, well, you know what? That makes so much sense, the mitochondrial dysfunction and everything, and the glucose and glutamine. And I was like, this guy's right. There's a lot of things that's going on here that makes sense. So I took a risk, and I had this. I was a very close family member of mine who was diagnosed with adenocarcinoma, the large intestine, and I said, you know what? I think we should give it a try. We should give another approach to this, because it was already stage 3, and the doctors basically told, we don't, the way how the tumors sit in and everything, it's going to be very hard to operate, and we're not going to be able to take out everything. And I said, you know what, we should consider going a different route, and we did that. And thankfully, today, Michael is still alive. He's in remission, no cancer, and he's kicking, and he's always very thankful for everything. And he's a very big, fan of your work. He watches all of your videos, by the way.
Yeah, well, I tell you, those are the kinds of patients that respond the best, because I get all these emails constantly from all these poor folks, and they usually come to metabolic therapy after everything fails.
Exactly.
They've been treated with toxic poisons, massive doses of radiation, surgical mutilations, all these kinds of cut, slash, burn, and your body is beat to hell. We did not evolve to be taking red devil doxorubicin into our pissing red and all this kind of stuff. This is nuts. What are you doing to these people? I mean,
crazy.
Yeah,
Crazy.
and then they still survive. It's hard to kill a human being doing all this stuff, right? So they still survive, but then their body is so beat up, the cancer eventually takes over. But when we get fresh people that were just diagnosed and they weren't treated with the standards of care, they respond the best. And if they're on board with what they have to shoulder in their battle with cancer, this is truly, he's battling his cancer. When you do metabolic therapy, you are in fact battling your cancer.
Yes.
When you
definitely.
do state of the care, you sit there like some mannequin being nuked and poisoned. But yeah, a lot of it falls on the shoulders of the patient. So what we did, we developed the glucose ketone index calculator,
yes,
which is called the GKI, the glucose ketone index. And when cancer patients get into the low GKI of 2.0 or below, that's where blood sugar comes down, ketones come up. Those cancer cells start getting hammered, and they start getting weak, and they start suffering. And then we come in with the embendazole and fenbendazole and some of these other drugs, and we start targeting the glutamine. And then we wrote the press pulse therapeutic strategy, which dovetails evolutionary biology, paleobiology into the treatment of cancer. Right. And that was the framework, what clinicians could do, but we did not have a day-to-day treatment protocol for that. We put the skeleton, the framework of the strategy that will eventually become the standard of care for cancer. But the paper we have under review right now fleshes out the skeleton. And really, it's a comprehensive treatment protocol, allowing physicians to know what to do if they see this, change when they see that. So it's a really comprehensive treatment. And once that's out in the public, when we can publish it, open access, and therefore patients can just simply take that and throw it on the doctor's desk and say, do this for me, will you?
Oh, that'd be awesome, man. I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I think I truly know that, it's the hardest thing, I guess, for patients is that, and I'm talking on behalf of my patients, obviously, I think the hardest thing is that they have to, once they're diagnosed, they tell them, hey, you have cancer, they have to, confront the system.
Yeah.
And the system is just, it's a monster. I'm gonna be straightforward. It literally is a big monster that puts on a lot of fear, a lot of pressure. I mean, these patients are really, pressured into chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, and it's overwhelming, how they're afraid. I mean, everybody who has cancer, I mean, obviously they're going to be afraid. and finding, someone that works within the field of metabolic therapy to be able to treat their cancer patients. First of all, there aren't many providers out there to begin with. So I think it's important that we start, training doctors, training physicians and training healthcare providers with metabolic therapy, because we need more people trained in this field. I mean, it has a tremendous impact on patients' lives, and this is why I think that your work that you're doing is, it's
well,
outstanding.
you actually touched the real weakness in this whole thing, is that there's very few people trained. They never heard of what we're saying, because they were told cancer is a genetic disease by the top leaders in the field, at the top medical schools, the top cancer centers, the National Cancer Institute. They all say cancer is a genetic disease. How could all these folks be wrong? They're wrong. They're flat wrong. And I have all the evidence to show that if people read it.
Exactly.
But but we don't want to throw out what they're doing. Because once you realize that if you take the patient when they're first diagnosed and then put them on a rigorous metabolic therapy, they get healthier and healthier. And then if you need to use chemo, you can use it in very restricted dosages, very low dosages at predictable times.
Yeah.
And therefore get more bang for your buck, killing tumor cells while not harming the patient. And you can do that for radiation for all tissues except brain. We've clearly indicated that irradiating somebody's brain is like the worst thing you can do to somebody, and it contributes. It's responsible for preventing long-term survival for brain cancer. It's largely responsible for taking that opportunity away from people. But all other, we know that when you irradiate somebody, blood sugar goes through the roof. But if you already are under a metabolically restricted regimen and you irradiate in a small dose, you can kill off a buttload of tumor cells with minimal toxicity.
Oh, yeah.
So we're not, and even immunotherapies, which are based on an incorrect theory, if you shrink tumors down to just a few surviving cells that are not completely gone with metabolic therapy, they may all share something in common because they've been able to survive what we threw at them. Then an immunotherapy, a targeted immunotherapy, might be able to hit the commonality of all those cells and wipe them out completely.
Exactly.
We have all of the tools necessary for long-term resolution of cancer with minimal toxicity. It's just that nobody knows how to use them yet.
Exactly. And that's how it should be done. I think that's how we're supposed to be, we should be, using metabolic therapy as the priority first, use that as the leading source of treatment, and then use the other ones just kind of like backups.
Yes.
Because I think, I mean, at least I see it in my patients, and I have a couple of patients, they're not doing any type of chemotherapy.
Mm.
They're not doing any type of radiation therapy. And, I know that, and yes, insulin potentiation therapy and all that, I think that does benefit to a certain degree, but my patients decided, Dr. Beltranl, I do not want to go and do chemotherapy anymore. I've had the side effects. I've gotten sick. I've gotten worse. I just want to deal with it anymore. I want to work with this. And I said, okay, we'll do it. And then when we start working with, metabolic therapy, doing the ketogenic diet, measuring their GKI, making sure that they're taking their supplements, and doing hyperbaric medicine if it's available in their city, we start seeing that the cancer starts to reduce in size. And at one time we even had one of the radiologists called me and he said, Dr. Beltranl, I'm a little bit concerned because this is the first time I'm seeing a patient who had breast cancer, and now I'm starting to see that the breast cancer has reduced in 40%. I mean, what are you doing? And then
they say the same thing to me. Well, when the people, I'm not a physician, I can't do what you do, but when the patients show the oncologists how they do the CAT, MRI, PET, whatever they're looking at, and it's going down, and it's getting smaller, and they always seem to be miffed. Oh, wow, I don't know what happened. Well, for crying out loud, we know exactly what happened. Don't you read the scientific literature? Unfortunately, no.
Yes, it's incredible. Dr. Seyfried, what would you think, the first thing a patient should consider, once they get diagnosed with cancer? what are the first things that you would recommend a patient to start doing?
Well, in the clinic that we work with some physician's assistants and things like this who have a little bit more flexibility in private clinics. The first thing in our treatment protocol, as a matter of fact, I'm just giving you the upfront on this. We look at the blood work of the patient. We look very at things you would never look. Well, of course, vitamin D for sure, and all the other things that we look at, parasites, and we see how many parameters are out of balance in the patient. And we find oftentimes they have diabetes, they have high blood pressure, hypertension, they got all kinds of things that screw up their blood work. So we have to try to bring that individual back to some level of metabolic homeostasis. And we can either do water fat, depending on the patient, or zero carb diet for about 10 to 14 days, where they can eat meat and they can eat fish and they can eat chicken and they can eat, things.
Right.
But there's no carbs in the diet.
Right.
And the body then slowly, and we're going back to our Paleolithic ancestry. We're all of our ancestors 200,000 years ago were always in nutritional ketosis. And our ancestors did not die from cancer. They died from infections and injuries. So we, in our modern medicine, we have antibiotics for infections, and we have orthopedic surgeons for injuries.
That's
so
right.
we can fix a lot of the things that killed our ancestors. And our ancestors did not have diabetes or cancer or high blood pressure or dementia that we know of. So they were dying from other things. But once you bring the body back into a state of nutritional ketosis, the blood parameters start to come online, and then we begin to attack the glutamine because all that will lower glucose, elevate ketones. Tumor cells can't use ketones or fatty acids, so that's a fuel for normal cells. The tumor cells are then marginalized. But they still survive because they have access to the amino acid glutamine, which is the most abundant amino acid in our body.
That's right.
But we can't go into glutamine targeting like a bull in a china shop because we need glutamine for the gut. Our immune system needs glutamine. The gut needs glutamine. The urea cycle. All of these things are dependent on availability of glutamine.
Yes.
That's where we come in with the pulse. That's why we wrote the press pulse therapeutic strategy. You can press glucose down. We don't need that. And the body can make little bits of it. You do exercise because when if you're on metabolic therapy and you exercise, muscle takes glucose out of the blood.
That's
muscle does not share glucose with other organs. And that's an evolutionary conserved adaptation. If a predator is chasing you, you better be able to run. And if you shared all your glucose in the muscles, you are now dead duck. This guy's going to eat you. So, and the brain, what little is left in the blood, the brain has first dibs on that. The tumor is down the ladder way far for its need for glucose. So it's going to get hammered. So you got to bring the blood work back. You got to do some exercise. And then we go in strategically with M-bendazole, fenbendazole, and some other drugs. Don, that's that's the best there is.
Wow.
Which we can't get a hold of. But if we had, that should be the #1 cancer drug used worldwide. It's Don, and it's not used.
I know. So if you could go ahead and please explain to my audience, in Brazil and in South America, why glutamine, is so important for cancer, for cancer cells, besides glucose, and why how these medications, inhibit cancer growth.
Yeah, well, the cancer needs carbons and nitrogen to grow, energy. You need ATP, which is the energy source, and then you have to have carbons because you need to synthesize lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids.
Right.
So, but where's the nitrogen coming from? Glucose can provide all that, but it can't make proteins or nucleic acids because there's a nitrogen shortage. So the glutamine comes in, and glutamine has two nitrogens, the amide nitrogen and the internal nitrogen. So you can start using those nitrogens for urea cycle. It makes ammonia. It does a lot of different things. And then, of course, you can synthesize DNA, RNA proteins with the nitrogen that's coming from glutamine. Also, cancer cells produce a lot of reactive oxygen species, which causes the mutations and damages a lot of things. but they
Mhm.
don't die because they have a powerful antioxidant biology. And that antioxidant biology comes from an elevation of glutathione inside the cancer cell, which is coming from glucose and glutamine. So not only is the glutamine needed for nitrogen and growth, it also protects the cancer cell against its ROS damage.
Ross
And
damage.
yes, and also, as we have shown, it generates energy through what we call substrate level, mitochondrial substrate level phosphorylation. So
Yeah.
it can produce energy through ferment in the absence of oxygen.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
So
it's
this
crazy.
molecule is so important. But if you attack glutamine too aggressively, you damage your microbiome. You
Yes.
damage your antioxidant systems. You paralyze your immune system. So
Yeah.
when we kill cancer cells, we have to have an army of immune cells coming into the battlefield, picking up the dead cancer cell, the corpses.
Right.
And if otherwise you get infections and you get all kinds of repercussions from this. So you have to honor. That's why we call it pulsing. Pulse, off,
Pulse.
on, off, on, off. It
Ah.
keeps everything working, and you're killing these damn cancer cells without toxicity. What's wrong with this?
Yeah. That's super. It's super interesting. I think is that it's just the way how we see things and understanding how metabolism plays a humongous role in how cancer reshapes literally its environment around it.
Yeah.
It's pretty fascinating. I mean, the whole field of cancer metabolism it's impressive. And you really did a great job in explaining a lot of things in your book. I think whoever has the opportunity to be able to read your book, if you're in the healthcare field, it's a little bit complex for some maybe layperson, but definitely you did a great job explaining everything. I mean, everything just makes such nice sense.
Well, you have to realize it makes sense, but you have to know the mechanisms of action and the details,
Yes.
and that's explained in our publications, which are open access.
Yes.
So people always ask me, "Oh, he didn't explain this. He didn't do that." I can't in an hour do all this. I mean, you're talking about 25, 30 years of experience of hard data collection in the lab. But it's all published in our papers.
So
you
Dr.
can see
Seyfried,
that.
so let me go ahead and dive in a little bit into, I guess you could say, my field, because I work with vitamin D. I'm a vitamin D researcher, and I treat a lot of patients with a protocol that I also developed known as the leaky gut syndrome protocol, which I use high vitamin D doses. What have you seen that vitamin D does to be able to benefit cancer patients?
Well, we haven't looked at that other than when we do the blood work, and if it is low, that it's supplemented. You want to bring vitamin D into the levels that are normal, probably on the higher range, a little bit more on the higher range of what you would normally do.
Okay.
You don't want to give them, because if you get too much vitamin D, you can get a kind of a vitamin D toxicity.
Toxicity, yeah.
And everything, we don't want to ever create anything. So we want to be balanced. And when you find a lot of cancer patients have very low levels of vitamin D, clearly that's one of the supplements that you must introduce to the patient to bring them back to metabolic homeostasis. And when you're in that, and then you lower the glucose that they need to grow, and then you come in with glutamine targeting, but always maintaining the blood work in a homeostatic state with vitamin D, and all the other markers that we look at. And when we do calorie restricted ketogenic diet metabolic therapy, we see triglycerides going way down. The HDL goes up, LDL goes down, vitamin D goes up, all the different things and all of a sudden, man, you say, this guy should be super healthy. And then they say to us, I've never felt better in my life.
Exactly. Yes.
Despite the fact that I have this tumor. The idea is, I said, well, the tumor doesn't feel so, you might feel good, but the tumor does not feel so good.
Yeah. Well, one of the things is, switching gears, I guess we can talk a little bit about the microbiome. I think this is the field of where we now are starting to explore in the last 15 years, the microbiome, and it's brought a lot of interesting things. And I think one of the things that we started to notice is that there are some cancers that obviously are associated, with certain types of bacterial infections, like H. pylori. We know that now it's been proven, many years ago that it's associated with, gastric cancer and all those. But what I've seen, at least, is that when I look at my patient who does have, cancer, let's say, intestinal cancer, adenocarcinoma, there are certain bacteria that are, associated with this type of cancer, and another thing is that I see is that once they go into chemotherapy, let's say they started chemotherapy, these drugs just, they literally destroy the microbiome
I know.
to such an extent, that you end up getting, I think one of the reasons that, obviously, besides the side effects that we know that these drugs already do, but one of the reasons why patients get worse is because their microbiome has been so compromised, that it's really hard for them to get back on track,
Absolutely. So this is what I'm saying. Okay, important. The healthy microbiome contributes to global physiological health. Okay.
Yes.
Now you have cancer, and we're going to blow the hell out of your microbiome. It makes no damn sense. And then they say to you, "Oh, keep your microbiome healthy while we poison you," and it blows the hell out of the microbiome. It makes no damn sense. The last thing you want to do is do this to a patient, because you need the microbiome to be healthy so you can recover.
Exactly.
And diarrhea is the clear sign that your microbiome is not healthy.
Exactly.
So this is the insanity of what we're doing to these poor cancer patients.
I know. Well, and the thing is that when at least when we put these patients on, a ketogenic restrictive diet, high fats, a little bit of protein, and very little carbs, their microbiome starts to improve. Literally, you start seeing a shift. I've done so many microbiome tests, and I start seeing, how they were in the beginning. Some of them have candida, some of them have parasites, some have bad bugs, you name it. But then you start changing the diet, and it's incredible how you start noticing not only improvements in alpha diversity of the microbiome, but you start seeing the good bacteria that we're supposed to be having starting to come back, like Akkermansia, bifidobacterial, lactobacillus, you name them. And then you start here's the thing is that I have this niche, I guess you could say, for the microbiome and vitamin D and metabolic therapy and diet as a more logical, sensitive, approach for being able to treat cancer patients.
I look at those as signs that if you can keep the microbiome healthy, the vitamin D levels, all these things in a homeostatic state, in a healthy range, then we go after the cancer. And maintain healthy biome while we're degrading the tumor. We don't ever want to do anything that's going to reduce the metabolic homeostasis of health. But what we're doing now is just the opposite of what we're doing. And you also have to realize the microbiome in our species can be very varied. You have to realize members of our ancestries hundreds of thousands of years ago, some of these guys, our ancestors, lived in the Arctic Circle. Some of them lived in the rainforest. Some of them lived in the desert. So the desert microbiome is not going to be the same thing as the Arctic microbiome or the rainforest microbiome.
Exactly.
We have this incredible flexibility that we can maintain health based on the cultural and regional microbiome of our area of existence. So when we do metabolic therapy, we have to be cognizant of cultural and religious differences in how we keep ourselves healthy in these different conditions. So when I say we use the glucose ketone index calculator to determine whether we're in metabolic homeostasis, that can be done with a vegan diet, a carnivore diet, a Mediterranean diet, a pescatarian diet. So you build the diet around the GKI to maintain healthy microbiome and other physiological process. So this makes the physician, he has to be knowledgeable about these different things when he's treating his patients. So this is called precision nutrition.
Exactly. Yes.
It's going to be a new field of medicine.
I'm 100% on board on that. 100% on board. I think that's the way to go. And definitely, whatever you put into your intestines, they definitely, your microbiome is going to be the first one to respond out there,
Yeah.
But and that just dates back all the way to Hippocrates. It's just he was so right on that. But what I can say for a fact is that I think one of the major issues I think that doctors have is that we just lack enough education on human nutrition. I mean, at least when I was in medical school, I didn't, if I did receive any type of education on nutrition, it would probably be like a total of tops 8 hours max,
Yeah, I know.
and that's it. So,
well, they gave you the food pyramid, and which is wrong. The food
exactly.
pyramid is an abomination as well. But we go back to our ancestors, and how did they live? How do we know that? Because Albert Schweitzer and others, physicians, humanitarian physicians, they went into these populations of folks that live according to the traditional ways, and they had infections and they had things, but they didn't have cancer. They didn't have a lot of the chronic diseases that we have. And a lot of them had a lot of exercise, and they were eating a lot of natural foods from the environment. They weren't eating large amounts of highly processed carbs that in a package that you could keep on the shelf for 6 months and not go bad. So, so you look at it and you see they slept, they had a better sleeping, they had more friends, more social interactions. They weren't sitting in front of a computer all day or in traffic. There wasn't anything to increase the kinds of stress that we have, chronic stress. So you put it all together, the great American diet and lifestyle is what's ultimately responsible for all the health problems that we have.
Brazil isn't very far away from that reality. We have very similar problems,
That's what I said. The greatest gift of America is the great American diet and lifestyle. Obesity, dementia, cancer.
Yeah.
But people love it.
Goodness.
Yeah, they love this stuff. I mean, you got to pry them away. As I said, you go into McDonald's, you don't even have to unask the car. They hand you it right through the window. I mean, that's a hell of a lot better than having to track down some deer and kill it, and then try to hack apart his liver and everything to get some organ. It's the we're I tell everybody this. We're still Paleolithic people living in a modern age, and our technology evolves so much faster than our biology. Biological evolution takes eons and eons. And the obese people we see today are the living ancestors of those that survived famine, hardship in the past. We have an incredible ability to store energy because we were always starving.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now we have all the stuff that we've needed for hundreds of thousands of years at our fingertips, and we have all these chronic diseases. Not complicated.
I know. It's just crazy, But I think I wish I could, share this video. Once this video is done, when I start sharing it all throughout every part of, South America and everyone, I think the biggest challenge is that you have to really convince people that diet is like the most important thing that you can do to be able to help yourself get better, especially if you have
it's diet and exercise. Exercise is absolutely critical.
Exercise, of course.
And there's several other of them. Reduce mental stress. Stress screws up your microbiome and it screws up your health. Poor sleep at night. No happiness. You gotta be enjoying things. People are grumpy. They're this, they're that. Their microbiome is screwed up. That makes them unhappy. It's all linked to the same thing. Metabolic homeostasis and the enjoyment of life and exercise. And we're sitting in traffic. We're not getting the exercise our ancestors had. So when I say ancestors, I'm talking about Paleolithic ancestors.
Of course, yeah. Our way of life has definitely changed to a great extent, and I think that even children nowadays we're seeing the incidence of cancer is just skyrocketed, and I just wanted to have your thoughts on that. And obviously, I know what the answer is, but for our audience, that are listening,
well, it's why
do you think we have so many diseases, not just diabetes, hypertension, autoimmunity, and cancer, but why do you think we just have such a high incidence of all these diseases today?
It's our diet and lifestyle is what's killing us. It's not a mystery here, but we've produced all of the things that we've craved in our evolutionary past, and now we have them available. and that's not how we evolved. So you have increases in autism, you have increases in neuropsychiatric problems, cancer, diabetes, obesity. I mean, all of these are diet and lifestyle issues. Our genes, you know how hard it is to get cancer? There's a couple of studies, actually, one I think came out of Brazil with macaque monkeys. I know it was South America, I can't be sure it was Brazil. They took these monkeys because monkeys are genetically more similar to us than, say, mice or rats.
Right.
We're 50 million years of evolutionary difference between a mouse and a human. We share a lot, of course, but we don't share everything. But monkeys share a lot more than us. So they took these monkeys, and we know that 20-methylcholanthrin is recognized as a chemical carcinogen. People know that. So they rubbed the carcinogen onto the skin of these monkeys year in and year out, and the monkeys were not getting cancer at all. So, but the mice and rats would get cancer from it, but they were feeding the mice and rats like a higher carbohydrate diet than they had. The monkeys were eating their natural diet. They didn't get cancer. So then they started to feed the monkeys the carcinogen, inject the carcinogen. 10 years. And they got one damn monkey that had some sort of a minor growth. And their conclusion of the experiment was monkeys are not a good model for cancer. Now, if you took those monkeys and gave them jelly donuts and Big Macs every day and rubbed the carcinogen on them, you'd have an altogether different outcome. They'd have a bad microbiome. And you have a cat walk around the cage, putting the fear of God into them.
Then you could say that you have the right model, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
We're not allowed
that's
to
great.
feed the gorillas and the chimpanzees. I told you, I go to the zoos and I always ask the veterinarians, how come you don't give these guys Big Macs and jelly donuts? Oh, they say it's animal cruelty. You can't do that. It's unhealthy for them. They're 98% similar to us. They have a zoo in San Diego. The San Diego Zoo is a very famous one, and they have these bonobos. And I guess they have a treat every week. The zookeeper puts a little honey on a tiny little plate and hides the plate somewhere in this large cage with a natural kind of environment. But the monkeys know, the bonobos here, they won't come out until the temperature is 70 degrees. They're one of these things that they like to be comfortable all the time. So they hear somebody out there and they know their plate is being hidden. So when they know that, once what temperature hits 70 degrees, they come flying out of this cave and they're tearing up everything looking for the plate. And the one guy who gets it keeps it for himself and licks it all off so nobody else has it. I said,
well, they learned, I guess.
Yeah. So I said, go down and give them a whole 6 dozen jelly donuts and see what happens.
Well, I guess that's how evolution started. We discovered sugar. Yeah.
Well, I always said, I wanted one of the greatest innovations of humankind, besides the development of learning how to use fire, and there's always a downside to everything. But who was the first guy to figure out how you can get honey from a beehive by smoking the bees so you don't get stung? The dumbass bear has to stick his nose into the hive, get his eyes and tongue stung, and he'll experience the pain just to have the sweetness from the honey. But, we're smarter than that. We found that if you smoke these damn bees, they won't bite you. The dumbass bear doesn't know this. But that's how important sweetness is for our evolutionary past. And now we have sweet in everything. We put high fructose corn syrup into everything. And everybody wonders why they're demented and fat and
exactly,
cancer, diabetes. It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. Well, Dr. Seyfried, I know that your time is very limited, but I am very happy, that you made some time for me today. And what would be your words, to anybody who's going through, a situation where they might be, diagnosed with cancer? What would you tell them?
Well, I think the first thing you need to do is get your GKI down as quickly as possible. Then go see your oncologist. And then outline a plan of therapy, recognizing that cancer is a metabolic disease, and how can their tools help you manage this. So, and of course, you're going to get slapped down most of the time,
Right.
and it's going to be very embarrassing for both the patient and
Yeah.
the caregiver, because you're raising uncomfortable things. You're not just following a
Yeah.
standard of care. Don't forget, in the United States, we have 1,000, almost 1,700 people, 1,700 a day dying from cancer, which
I
comes
know.
to about 70 an hour. Can you believe this?
That's crazy.
Almost 612,000 a year. And
That's
we're not
crazy.
making we're not dropping the death rate at all.
No, we're not.
It goes up year in and year out. So whatever we're doing, it's not working.
It's
And
not.
metabolic therapy will drop the death rate. People need to know that if they
Yes, they
want to
do.
stay alive, they're going to have to get their glucose. And then we have the meter, the Keto Mojo meter. You can buy it from Amazon. You can get all the consumables. So people can absolutely take charge. Then you can consider chemo and radiation and surgical, the other procedures.
Yeah.
You know, but all that is needs to be known.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. I think, we need to get the word out. We need people to be aware that there is an option, there is an alternative, and that should be actually the first thing that they should be choosing to do, and in regards to, do you have any words that you would like to send to future doctors that are becoming, will become a future doctor, future nurse practitioner, future healthcare provider? What would you tell them?
Read my book.
I got it right over here.
Now that, let me tell you, Eduardo, that is the correct book. Unfortunately, on Amazon, you'll see all these other books written by me. I didn't write any of those books.
Yeah, I'm aware. I know it's Cancer as a Metabolic Disease, written by Dr. Thomas Seyfried. It has to be by Thomas Seyfried. There are other books out there. I am aware of that.
Yeah,
I'm going to go ahead and share the link. I'm going to share the link on your book so people can be able to find it, and make sure that they know which book to buy and be able to purchase, so they can go ahead and read it. It's a marvelous book that you wrote. I really enjoyed it a lot. I think it's an eye opener for, I think, anybody who reads it. It's going to be a very big eye opener.
Well, and the book is dedicated to all the people that suffered and died from toxic treatments for cancer.
I know.
So it's not to any, it's to the field. And I apologize for the price. I did not set the price of that book. The publisher sets the price.
I think, anybody, who buys your book, they know what they're going to be getting. This is a precious book, it's one of a kind, and anybody, who obviously is going to be going through this, and I'm not only just talking to the patients, but also referring to anybody who is a doctor, who is a healthcare provider, this is a book that you must learn. You must read it. Dr. Seyfried explains everything in such a nice manner. It really has been a life changer for many of my patients, and I can't be so thankful, for everything that you're doing, all your research. Please keep on, bringing more information to us. Please keep on the good work that you're doing, Dr. Seyfried. You are a light for many. You have no idea the impact that you're having on my patients' lives. So I only can just say, good things about you, and commend you for everything that you're doing, and just congratulate you, because we need more people like you in the world.
No, thank you very much. And you're one of those new people too.
Thank you. All righty. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Seyfried, for your time. This is Dr. Thomas Seyfried. He's the author of Cancer as a Metabolic Disease. He is also the professor at Boston College.
Yes.
That's correct. And please take your time, read the book. It's excellent. You're going to love it. Okay. Dr. Thomas, thank you so much for your time. You have been an excellent person to interview today. I think what you have done, in regards to the cancer and everything, therapy as a metabolic disease is, we need more people like you in the world.
Well, thank you very much. It was a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.